We're about to turn the page on February, and that means March is coming in hot, and it's crunch time in the fantasy game, so we're digging into the trenches on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, tapping in to some Minutemen making the most of their minutes, red hot under the radar targets that you need, JVR, Nicky Robertson, and others. We'll get to big-time bets as well for Saturday's loaded board. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here we go, hockey heads. Another week of fantasy hockey dominance in the books. We hope for your squads across the board. Happy Friday and welcome back inside the lab to your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 wager hits. Steele, you know what it is. Shout out to the everydayers as well, making us your first listen every single day. We don't just get that plug in because we like to. We love to. We love showing all of the love back to you guys, and we hope that this has been another good week. So today's episode, of course, we wrap with big-time bets every single day, trying to put money in that pocketbook as well. However,
yes, sir.
Minutemen, guys, capitalizing on limited 15 minutes or less, and they're on heaters right now, Steele. These players are out there in a lot of formats. They're making the most of limited ice time. Nick Robertson, JVR, Maverick, Bork, you've got a couple of guys you want to talk about. Turn it right over to you because I think this is a really good angle to capitalize on, especially while these players are hot. So who do you want to talk about first? Because I'm excited because I really do think some of these guys can be the nice little augmented piece to take some teams over the top.
They really can, and I have a few of these players, and I've had them on my team for multiple months now because they're just such great depth fillers for your lineup and your roster. I want to start off with probably the hottest player on this list, Warren Foegele of the LA Kings. He's having a tremendous season in his first year with the Kings organization. I've had him on my keeper league for the last couple of months. He's been a drop and an ad in my Yahoo fantasy leagues as well. And the season he had last year with Edmonton, it wasn't a fluke. He's proven it right now. 31 points in 56 games, 16 goals, 15 assists. The peripherals are pretty solid as well. 32 blocks, 52 hits with 131 shots. He's getting some power play unit on the second line, on the second unit right now. He's got 4 points. He's got 5 points in his last 5 games. So he's red hot right now. Just one of those guys that he is able to jump up onto the second line, get a little bit more ice time when needed, but he's so good and so confident with his game in the bottom six, and he's done a fantastic job this year. He's just getting over 16 minutes of average ice time, typically under 15, but one of those guys, like I said, just a great depth player for your fantasy hockey team.
13% on Yahoo owned, 25% on Fantrax. Steele, 4 goals, 3 assists for 7 points over his last 6 games. I think what I like about it the most here, you mentioned the deployment on a second power play unit. That third line, Philip Deneau and Trevor Moore are very underrated players. Yes, they can be streaky at times, most definitely, but right now it's the jump on them, get a piece while it's hot train. Good third line on the LA Kings that the LA Kings, I don't know what you feel about them. At times, I'm ready to say they're a dark horse. And at times, I'm like, I don't buy into Darcy Kemper. I don't buy into some of those players on the blue line. But I think this is one of those teams that when they play all together, they're very, very tough to beat. We'll see what happens down the stretch. Warren Foegele, boom, your boy, go out there and get a piece. The Kings score in bunches, so it's sometimes feast or famine. Looking at them on the total goals for this season, Steele, they do sit well out of the top half, but again, in bunches, get a piece. Very similarly in bunches lately for Nicolas Robertson. A player in Leafland that obviously gets a lot of attention for what he's been saying in the media, what he's been requesting trades and whatnot. Right now, Steele, he's saying all the right things. I don't know if you've seen this, and I don't know if it's true, but
he's turning around on this one.
He now wants to be a part of this team. His game is growing under Craig Berube. I don't know if I'm buying into all of that. All I know is he's making the most of his opportunity right now. Only 12 minutes of ice time per night. The ownership, I don't even need to look at it right now because I know he is out there. He is out there in all formats. And most importantly, the confidence in this player has never been there. And this is a guy who's shown, offensively at least, trigger man type value. He has some at times. 3 goals, 1 assist over his last 2 games. The lines in Toronto are shuffling. Right now, to me, as the Leafs have this really great schedule down the stretch, he's one of the first couple of guys I'm going to look at the start of each week, depending what the schedule is for the Leafs, because I think with this confidence growing, Steele, and the minutes starting to creep, he shoots the puck a lot as well right now. Lot of offensive value, I believe, to be had in Nick Robertson. And just remember, all of these players, this is kind of take it with a grain of salt because they are Minutemen. Most of these guys, bottom line players or bottom 6 for sure. Still lots of value to be had, and you got to take a risk at this point in the game.
Look, I can't deny that he's had a good couple of games. 2-goal game the other night for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He has that power factor at times through the season, but I also can't beat around the bush. This might be the one player on this list that I have to disagree with. This might be a surprise to some people, to most who are close to me, not so much. I'm just not a fan of Nicolas Robertson. I'm not a fan of his game. I'm not a fan of the way he plays, his skating ability, his puck moving, his decision making, the opportunities that he's had in the top 6 and not capitalizing on it on more of those chances.
Fair.
For me, he's hot right now, and I can't deny it. And because of the good schedule, I'm going to agree with you in that sense. But for me, Nick Robertson, it's risky. And while that third line has been good and sometimes even the best line in the night of Bobby McMahon, Max Domi, and Robertson, I really just don't see it with this player, honestly. This is one that I really try to stay away from. I know he's available out there, but there might be opportunities in the coming week, again, because of the good schedule, but I can't do it with this guy. I'm just not a fan of the way he plays in fantasy hockey. To me, it's irrelevant.
Right now, I got to agree somewhat. I guess I just see the flashes of offensive ability and the confidence that I'm seeing from the Leafs. At this point, I've said it multiple times over the last couple of days, you might not actually like the player, but you might have to like what's going on the ice and in the schedule just a little bit more. However, we're going to talk about a whole bunch more players after the break. These are guys, high risk, high reward. We're going to continue to highlight angles like this because we've talked about so many of them over the year. I got a couple of honorable mentions quick before we get to break. Keegan Colasar, Taylor Radish, Shane Wright, all of these guys at times very valuable. All of these guys going to be out there for you to own. Those guys' minutes all around the same, 14, 13, 15, making the most of their ice time, and they're out there under the radar targets that you should be considering. JVR, Maverick, Bork, Jamie Benn, some other players, big time bets coming up after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. When the games tip off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, ride the wave with Steele and I and tap into some same-game parlays. I don't know about tomorrow's bet, Steele, for Saturday, but we'll probably be making a whole bunch of same-game parlays at some point. Right now, FanDuel new customers get 150 bones in bonus bets if that first $5 wager hits. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
And once again, thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod with your boys, Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin. Thank you so much for all that love and support. We really do appreciate it. Lots of guys that get limited amount of ice time, under 15 minutes typically. All these guys we're talking about, 99% of the time, they're available out there. They are rostered under 15%. Let's go over to the Dallas Stars because there's a few players we want to talk about. Jamie Benn, Maverick, Bork, who get limited ice time but have a lot of fantasy value, both for a couple of times getting into the top 6 group, typically being in that third line, but 2 guys that have found some success so far this season in Dallas.
Shout out to Maverick Bork. This is a former first-round draft pick, and I know he was a 30th overall pick, so he might be a borderline second liner. There's talent here. Does he have to make up for his frame? And sometimes he has very poor decision-making. He's a 23-year-old kid who has only 52, he's a rookie, 52 games under his belt, 53 games. He can shoot, and he really can skate. And I think this is going to be an important piece for the Dallas Stars' future. A cornerstone player? No, but a very important secondary scoring piece to go around the Wyatt Johnsons, the Jason Robertson, Stankovens of the world moving forward. So I think he is going to continue to get a really good look. And we've talked at length. The Dallas Stars are for real. And I know their offense isn't exactly jumping off the page this season. I wanted to bring that up because, I like to talk about overall goals for, Steele. It's just a fact. When we're talking these pieces also, let's be real, you're not picking them up for peripherals. However, Maverick, Bork, the Dallas Stars are the 9th highest scoring team in the NHL. And the line that he gets to play on right now isn't jumping off the page, Oscar back Sam Steele, but he's making the most of his opportunities. He does sometimes get a little look on that second power play unit, and he does have the benefit of playing with some really good veteran presences like Jamie Benn. So I know you like Maverick Bork. This season, I think he's got 9 goals, 10 assists in 52 games. However, right now, Steele, is why we're taking a look at this kid. 3 goals, 2 assists over his last 5 games, not actually getting a ton of ice time even because of that. So still well under 15 minutes. He's out there in all leagues. I like him. I also like what Jamie Benn has done, some peripheral value with him as well.
Yeah, just another guy, again, in the bottom 6 who gets it done and just kind of does fill out those peripheral categories. I've had him in a few different leagues from time to time throughout the season so far. And while there is a clear regression in his game going from 78 points to 2 seasons ago, 60 points last year, and now 38 in 58 games this year, he's still on pace for 50-plus points. The shots are down, the hits are down a little bit, the blocks are down, but it's still fine because he's still producing at a very good rate, and he's hot right now, like we're talking about with all of these guys. He's got 5 points in his last 5 games, just getting under 16 minutes of average ice time as well. This actually might be the most rostered player that we're talking about. I believe on Yahoo, the last time I saw him, he was at 45, somewhere 50%. ESPN actually a little bit higher.
58% on Yahoo.
58% on Yahoo, somewhere around the same, I believe, on ESPN. So might be a little tougher to get this player, but if he's out there, he's red hot right now. He's making the most out of those opportunities. Again, not on the first power play unit. He's on the second, but still a pretty good power play unit with Mikael Granlund, Mason Marchment, and Logan Stankoven. So lots of opportunities. Still, he's still a lot of fantasy value with this player. So I like Jamie Benn. Maverick Bork also showing us what he can do in Dallas this year.
When I look at this forward group for the Dallas Stars, just a quick sidebar before we move on, we'll wrap with bets always. Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Stankoven on the top line. Mason Marchment, Duchesne, Granlund, very good second line. Jamie Benn, Wyatt Johnson, Evgeny Dadonov. On the third line, so much balance, such a good mix of players that have a lot of different styles. It's a lot of wrinkles to throw at your opponent, and I think that's actually going to mean really good things for not only the fantasy value of these pieces that we mentioned, but for the team down the stretch. Let me talk about, you talked about Jamie Benn as being the most owned player. Right now, for me, if I'm going to go out there and add any one of these guys, and here comes the old flip saying of I want a piece of what's going on in Columbus right now. And I know James Van Riemsdyk is playing on the 4th line with Sean Corrali and someone else that, shout out to the vape god, Troy. He'll probably reprimand me for not knowing who else he's playing with. Joe Labate. I don't know who that is. No disrespect. It's not sexy, Steele, but JVR is a gamer. I don't know if everyone heard that story. He got all his teeth knocked into his mouth a couple of weeks ago. He actually had a tooth sewn back into his mouth. He went back out there, and they had to dig the tooth out and stitch him back up. He was ready to play the next night after like hours of surgery. 4 goals in his last 4 games, Steele, and only playing right around 11 minutes of ice time per night. However, he's getting some look on the second power play. Boone Jenner is now on that unit. Ivan Provorov, Matejchuk. I actually kind of like that second unit. So those 2 things. And how about the Columbus Blue Jackets, Steele? They are playing really good hockey. The only 4 teams that have scored more goals than them, Washington, Winnipeg, Tampa Bay, and Florida. Those are those are cup threat teams.
Those are top tier teams right there.
Not saying Columbus is, but any way, shape, or form right now, this is Big Flip's disclaimer of the episode. get yourself some Columbus Blue Jackets because the vibes are real. They're getting healthy and they're scoring goals.
Boone Jenner's still out there. Cole Sillinger, Kent Johnson, James Van Riemsdyk. Again, doesn't jump off the page peripherally.
Nope.
Not going to get blocks, hits, even shots on net, but 22% shooting percentage this year. It's the best of his career. 14 goals, 28 points total, and he's doing that on the fourth line with limited ice time. Great pickup for some of those good matchups in the coming weeks for the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're going to be talking about them for big time bets when they play the Detroit Red Wings later tonight as well. I got Vegas Golden Knights, Brett Howden. Yeah, I know you want to talk about Keegan Kolesar as well, and then we can get over to big time bets and create a 13-leg money line parlay at the end. Brett Howden is a very interesting player to me. I've had him on a few different of my teams this year from time to time throughout the season. Just one of those depth guys once again, just kind of like Jamie Benn of the Dallas Stars. Third line center, centering Keegan Kolesar and Ivan Barbashev, who's kind of got knocked down from that top line.
Yeah.
Brandon Saad has kind of taken over for him as of right now. But Brett Howden is a guy who brings a physical aspect, fills out the peripherals. He's scoring goals. He has a career-high 29 points so far this season in 58 games, plus 9, 24 penalty minutes, 101 shots, career high, 97 hits, and 45 blocks. So this is a guy that fills out those peripherals, especially for a depth player, and I think he's a great add, a great addition to your fantasy hockey team, again, when the schedule is appropriate to do so.
When I thought about this before coming on to today's show, Steele, about the Vegas Golden Knights in general, is anybody talking about the Vegas Golden Knights at all? And when you look at all the other division leaders, Florida, tons of attention. Capitals, probably the darling of all top teams. Winnipeg, being looked at as a cup threat. And then you have Vegas in there with 76 points, a solid 4-point cushion on the Edmonton Oilers, and no one's talking about them. And a lot of the reason why they are where they are is they have a bunch of under-the-radar, diamond-in-the-rough fantasy gems that are just plugging away, providing value. Pavel Dorofeyev out of nowhere. Brett Howden on a heater. Keegan Kolesar, big-time performances. Even Tanner Pearson has had some value this season. They bring in Brandon Saad. I think he has only got 1 or 2 goals, so that hasn't really jumped off the page. But with the blue line that this team has, Steele, very similarly to how I was talking about the balance of the Dallas Stars forward group, I think you could say the same thing about the blue line here in Vegas. Very, very balanced and very hard to play against. This team's for real, and I think with them sitting so pretty and some of these pieces not getting a ton of minutes but still performing, like Keegan Kolesar, like Brett Howden. Brett Howden, by the way, 7 assists in his last 4 games. Owned at 3% on Yahoo. Wake up, people. There's value to be had here for a guy on a good team. And I understand the minutes aren't there, but that's what we're saying right now. They're hot. They're in good situations, and they're worth your fantasy attention. Keegan Kolesar has kind of cooled a little bit, Steele, of late. Still some value there. Brett Howden's the guy I'd be looking at. And the reason why we're looking at all of them is even though because of the limited time, they're putting up points. And if you can capitalize on a couple of players like that right now, Steele, it's not a matter of taking your team to the top. You'll be there. So make sure you got your eyes on all of these players. Is it going to last? Nick Robertson, you called it? Probably not. But for now, worth a look, worth a shot, and worth the risk, I would say. All of these players.
And we have a few more players we want to rattle off after the break, some honorable mentions. We'll get to them quick. And then, of course, big time bets. 13 games on the schedule tonight, Saturday. Stay tuned for all the best picks. This episode, though, it's also brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like me, your mornings have to start with a good cup of coffee. But I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it anymore. That's why I turned to Trade. So did Flip. And let me tell you, this coffee is absolute next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. The subscription makes it so easy. No more last-minute grocery store runs or settling for whatever is on the top shelf. And if you don't love your first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. Drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. You have to try Trade. And once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes with Flip Livingstone and Steele Rodin. We really appreciate all that love and support. That's why we do what we do and try to help you with your fantasy hockey leagues. Hopefully win your championships through some of our advice and insight. Flip, let's rattle off a few more of these under the radar targets for the weekend and the foreseeable future.
Yep.
Shane Wright, I want to talk about him real quickly. You brought him up as well. He's having a fantastic season in Seattle, regardless of how the overall team is doing right now. 34 points in 57 games. A guy that, again, when you look at what he's done in the limited amount of ice time, or the limited amount of ice time plus the limited amount of games over the last 3 seasons, 25% shooting percentage in 8 games his first year, 33% shooting percentage in his second year, and he's at 22% shooting this season in 57 games. Now, he doesn't shoot the puck a lot. He only has 59 shots on net this year, 44 blocks, 44 hits. But when he does choose to shoot the puck on net, he's making the most of those opportunities, those high danger areas, and he's burying them. He's capitalizing on them. And that's what matters most, is he's actually point producing right now in the offensive zone for fantasy hockey. It's crucial. Again, you would like to see a lot more peripheral wise, but again, that will come as he develops and grows his game. Still a very young player, fourth overall just a few drafts ago. Shane Wright, I like his game right now, and he's a great player to add if you need some depth in there.
Ice time up to 14 minutes over his last 4 or 5 games, 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists over that same 4-game span. Ownership up as well, 49 on Fantrax, 12 on Yahoo. 2 main points why I like Shane Wright right now, especially. I think that line he's on is sneaky. You've heard it from me. I have all episode on these combinations right now, and I think that actually has a lot to do with some of the success of these players.
Yeah.
Shane Wright is playing with Jared McCann and Andre Burakovsky. Yeah, they don't exactly, get you out of bed in the morning fantasy-wise, but they're solid. And I think with a young player like that, he just needs a couple of vets that know what they're doing offensively, at least. Say what you will about McCann and Burakovsky's 200-foot game, which is probably given Seattle fits. However, value in Shane Wright. I got a whole bunch of honorable mentions, and I'll ream them off quick just because they also are hot and they're available. Philip Tomasino, he has 2 goals and 2 assists in the last 4 games. He's out there. Pittsburgh, ugly, but he's performing. There's another player that I was just looking at here on this list that I wanted to throw out. Oh, Will Smith, San Jose. Also out there in most leagues, 1 goal, 3 assists over his last 4 games. Dylan Holloway, ownership a lot tougher, but he's red hot, 3 points in his last 3 games. So those are some other names that if you're looking for fill-ins, you're looking for offensive boosts. We're not talking a ton of peripheral value here, and they are high risk, high reward situations, but I really think that a lot of these guys are kind of worth it at this point in time, Steele. But let's talk bets if you're ready.
They definitely are, and we definitely might have overwhelmed some people with all these players out here, but we're going to overwhelm you some more with these big-time bets. Big-time bets, Saturday night, 13 games on the board. I'm going to rattle off my 3 picks, and then I'll throw it over to you because I do want to get to the 13-leg money line parlay with some big boards we do. This one for me was it was pretty easy with me looking into the research and just from what I've seen recently. These are my 3 favorite picks. Islanders on the money line, first game Saturday, 12:30 against the Nashville Predators. Islanders at home. For me, it's easy. I'm going with the Islanders. Predators have just, again, like you like to say, they are doo-doo. They can't score goals right now.
Big win the other night against the Jets, but
big win, but yeah,
they are doo-doo.
Still, they are still pretty bad. One of the worst teams in the league. Islanders on the money line, still fighting for a playoff spot in the Eastern. Second pick, I went with the Blue Jackets the other night against the Red Wings. They clutched up for me. Blue Jackets once again, this time at home against those Red Wings. Boone Jenner, Kent Johnson, Kirill Marchenko. They're playing great right now. I'm taking the Blue Jackets once again. Sabres on the money line against the Montreal Canadiens at home as well. I like the way Jason Zucker's playing. I like the way Alex Tuch is playing, regardless of some of these outcomes for Buffalo. These are still two of the bad teams in Eastern Conference. Montreal, they did get a 4-3 overtime win over the San Jose Sharks the other day, but that's the San Jose Sharks. I'm going with the Sabres. Those are my 3 picks. Lock of the night, though, Blue Jackets money line.
First pick of the night, by the way, comes from that Montreal game. This one's screaming over to me. Both teams involved with a ton of high-scoring games. Montreal, 5 of their last 7 over the number. Buffalo, 6 of the last 8 over the number. So this one easy for me, Steele. 6.5, I'm going to take it over. I've got 4 picks, actually, and I think that's probably because there's so many juicy games, and I honestly did find this board to be very tricky, in my opinion. Edmonton just got called out by Chris Knobloch. I didn't call him Chuck this time. In the media, and saying that he's got too many passengers on his team, too many guys out there just along for the ride with the big boys. And I think in his career, this isn't a stat category box that I can check, but in times that his teams or himself have been called out by coaches, I know McDavid has responded. So I'm going to say that the Oilers do as well. Head-to-head against the Carolina Hurricanes, it's a pretty even split. Actually, I think it's favored to Carolina's side of things. So it's not exactly a lock by any stretch, Steele. But I'm going with the angle of a pissed-off McJesus and a team in the Edmonton Oilers that is far better than how they've been performing. So my second pick, Oilers on the money line. Third pick, Utah money line, playing great hockey at home to the New Jersey Devils again. The Devils are a good club, don't get me wrong. And head-to-head, it's the old Arizona thing here, right? 6-3-1 Jersey's record over their last 10. However, Utah, big W's over their last 3 games, including the most impressive one, 6-1 over Mini in their last time out. Hit me with the Mammoth on the money line at home. And my lock of the night is exactly what I alluded to already. McDavid in 14 career regular season games against Carolina, 21 points. Hit me with Connor McDavid, 2+ anytime points as my lock of the night. He's going to respond, and so will the Oilers. 4 picks, but that's the lock of the night.
I like the picks. Let's rattle off because we're running out of time. Let's get to the 13-leg money line parlay. Let's see if we can go 13 for 13 or try to get our best record so far. I'm going to say the matchups. You tell me who you're taking on the money line, and then we'll rattle this off. First game, Lightning and Capitals. Who you taking?
Is that the early game on the schedule, too, isn't it? It's the opening
12:30 game.
The Tampa Bay Lightning, I think, have reeled off 7 straight W's, so this is going to be a very, very intriguing one to watch, and I'm just stalling. Coin flip situation, Steele, and Vegas is favoring it. I'm going to go with Tampa here. They're far too hot, and I know Washington is good, but I'm going to take Tampa in a coin flip, but I couldn't fault you to go either way, honestly.
Yeah, it's an even -110 for both teams right now on the money line. Second game, Islanders, Predators. I think you agree with me. We're going with the Islanders in this situation. Panthers over the Flames. I think we can agree also maybe the Florida Panthers, or are you feeling Calgary?
For me, in this sense, I'm going to go with the heavy favorite, but if I was doing a smaller parlay, there's no value in Florida, but for the sake of just picking winners right now, I'm going to go with Florida.
Bruins and Penguins, who you taking?
There's no way I can bet on the Pittsburgh Penguins right now. If I get burned by betting against them, that's one thing. I can't ride with the Pittsburgh Penguins right now, not even at home. Again, kind of a coin flip game that I would stay away from if not for the juice of this parlay, but I like the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I go with the Bruins as well. We're going to go with the Blue Jackets. Would you agree with me in that sense?
Riding the hot hand, baby.
Senators and Sharks. I think we, as much as it might pain us, we're going to go with the Senators here. Do you want to go with the Sharks?
I just like plus 260 and minus 330 for the Sens at home. I could definitely see the Sharks making some noise here. I would really be inclined to take the over 5.5 if I had to pick anything. So I would do that. Maybe let's start doing that next time, Steele. We'll just pick a pick from each game. But let's go with the Sens at home, who have actually been really bad of late.
Sens at home, I agree with that. Sabres at home as well. Yep. I will disagree with you from this game, but just for this parlay, I will go with the Oilers. I actually will. I will end up going with the Hurricanes. Typically, but I'll go with the Oilers in this sense. Jets at home against the Flyers. What about the Kings and Blues?
I'm gonna go Kings. I'm gonna fade the Blues all the way down the stretch. I'm not buying into it. Sorry.
Devils and Utah.
Honestly, for the sake of the parlay, again, this is a kind of a coin flip situation for me, but this is a confident young Utah club really pushing for a playoff spot. And I'm not saying the New Jersey Devils have anything locked up, but I'm going to go with the hungrier, hotter Utah club.
Blackhawks and Ducks, two of the worst teams in the Western Conference. I'm going with the Ducks here. They're playing some good hockey. 5-2 win over Vancouver most recently.
Ducks are 7-2-1 in their last 10 games. I'm going with the Ducks heavy here. Chicago is a complete dumpster fire.
Last game of the night, Canucks and Kraken. Kraken are at home.
Throw this one right in the meat grinder, Steele. How about you pick? Because every time I bet against the Vancouver Canucks, they pooch me, but I really don't like the makeup. Kraken and Blues are getting faded hard down the stretch. You pick one and we'll smash it in there.
I'm going to go with the Vancouver Canucks here. $10, 13-leg money line parlay wins you 13 grand. That's the parlay. I'm actually going to toss $2 on this just for fun. But that's the parlay. Those are the picks. Hopefully we come back tomorrow night and it actually banged out 13 for 13. Those are the locks of the night. Those are the big time bets for Saturday. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Pod your first listen. Make sure for your second listen, you check out the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. From your boys, Livingstone and Steele Rodin. We wish you good luck with your bets, your weekly matchups, and we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.